All right, it's Mikey with Lightenupandshoot. I am here with Rob Rice. You can check out his site at IamRobRice.com.
Correct.
We're going to go through Lightroom 4 beta. I've never really messed around with it. You've been playing around with it for what, for a month now?
For the past week or so, just on this trip pretty much, editing everything with it. So.
And you're really liking it? I like some of the HDR effects you're doing. There's a few changes to Lightroom. We're just going to quickly go through that, have a little bit of fun, and check out Lightroom 4 beta. Rob, you're in the driver's seat.
Here we go. Basically, let's start with Marcello. We had some intense lighting on him from both sides with softboxes, kind of like a Gatorade commercial almost, except he's eating chicken. So basically, when I try to do the Dave Hill effect kind of a thing, or just the more intense effect,
like an HDR.
Yeah, pretty much. I shoot in RAW. That's important to me, just because you can get more detail in the darks as well as the highs.
Which I don't.
Which you don't. And I don't know why. I don't know what you're thinking there. So there's a couple of settings here that I really like to use to try to get that effect. Contrast is one of them. Let's see, is it letting me edit? There we go. And I prefer to just...
You actually like to highlight it and use the
keys, especially when your mouse trackpad isn't working. So yeah, you can just highlight whatever you're looking to edit, and use the up and down keys, and you'll see that you can do it in small amounts, or if you hold down shift you can do it in large amounts, and we'll just go kind of crazy with him and see what happens.
So when you're doing sort of an HDR thing, you like to kind of push everything to the extreme and then tweak it.
Yeah, depending on what image I'm working on. If there's something that I know I want extreme, I'll start it out extreme and try to work my way down. If there's something I want a little bit more natural, I'll start at natural and just work my way up a little bit to try not to make it too intense.
Show us which sliders you're going to play around with for that HDR effect.
Let's do it. Contrast is a big one. If you look at your histogram, it'll basically just kind of throw everything to the side. Right. Make it really high, make it really low. And then to kind of counteract that sort of thing, I will go back to the highlights and bring it down. Highlights is kind of like your new recovery.
Okay.
You can bring that down and it'll bring down.
Do you like it better than the old recovery?
I do. I like it because, for one, it's in the middle. So you have negative side and a positive side. Right. So you can adjust it that way instead of just turning up recovery.
Gotcha. Because sometimes it would try to get a little bit flat for me.
Yeah.
In the old recovery.
So now you can even bring back some of those high ends that you want. Same as shadows. You can go down with it, or you can bring some more up if you want to bring some more fill light in there. Shadows is the new fill light. And let's see here. So let me just start playing with it and see what happens. Highlight. We're back. Here we go. So I'm playing around with the highlights. I want to play the exposure a little bit. It's a little dark in general, so I might bring it to where it looks kind of good and I can start playing with it. All right. And then, so because the contrast kind of threw it all to two sides, I want to bring that back with the highlights by turning it down a little bit. And as you can see with the fill light, or the shadows, as it's now called, I brought it up a little bit. And you can kind of see the before. Let me take away these windows so you can see it a little bit better. You can see the before and after. That is before.
It's got a little bit too much black in it for me.
Yeah, and this is after, and we can play with that as well. So the whites, as you can see up here, are going to be your very highs, which we don't really have many of, and that's okay sometimes. And your blacks are down here, and like Mikey said, his blacks, you like a little bit more of that, a little bit less dark. So you can even click and drag up there if you want to, and you can see that it's adjusting down here where it says blacks. Or you can just come down here, and I like the keyboard. I like the up arrows, down arrows, so just try to find a little middle ground.
It does give a nice HDR effect. Let's take a look at one that is shot in JPEG.
Oh, let's try.
And just see what you might do with her.
All right. Well, first off, she is very pretty. Laura was one of our best models. And she's naturally, her skin is awesome. So when you do this kind of effect, it'll definitely mess with the grittiness. Yes, it'll bring those out. It'll make it a little bit intense. Like as you can see, clarity is another thing that I like to play with, especially with the guys, just to make them more gritty. If we do it to her, it might be a little intense. Well, it kind of looks cool because her skin is really good already. And you can kind of counteract that if you would like to with, there's a couple different things you can do. They have kind of a softened skin adjustment brush setting. And you can just kind of go and brush that in, and it'll kind of just counteract what you just, oh, I forgot about your mouse. Counteract what you just did in a way.
And if you hit O, you can actually see where
what you're brushing.
Right.
And do the nose. I like to keep the eyes really nice and crisp as well as the lips. And so let's just see what happened there.
Oh, to turn it back off?
Yeah. And sometimes it's a little bit too smooth. Like her skin is already really good. And you can kind of see the effect right there, what it's doing. And you can also play around with that exposure. You can play around with taking the clarity down some more. So that's what I can do with female faces because I want them to still be kind of pure and natural. And I don't want too much grit. But if I want everything else to be gritty, eyes, lips, clothes, hair, I'll turn up the clarity and then kind of bring it back down with the adjustment brush. And we can play with the kind of intense look. Bring the contrast up. Because I did that, I want to bring the highs down a little bit. Play with the shadows, maybe fill in her side of the face a little bit.
I like that highlights and shadows.
Yeah, it's really cool. A lot better than recovery and fill, like, to me.
And then if that still now has too much black in it, now what would you do?
You can just go to the bottom one here, which is blacks, and kind of fill it in a little bit.
Right.
And then you can kind of bring down the shadows if you want to even it out as well. So you just got to know that there's like kind of 5 different layers now. You got like the really darks, the shadows, your main exposure, which kind of controls everything in the end, and your highlights and your whites. And then your contrast is the one that's going to be stretching that out or bringing it back in. And stretching it out is going to make it more intense, more contrasty, and bringing it back in is going to make it a little duller.
I like it a lot.
Vibrance is another one that I like to throw in there every now and then. You can turn that up, turn the saturation down, play with that kind of effect, play with the color balance.
And just as a last one while we're sitting here, why don't you take a look at that one in the long exposure? I think you had a 30-second exposure. You know what? Old lady or the
We can try the old lady. I'm going to play with that.
Let's do the old lady. Let's
All
see
right.
what you do with her. This old lady that we met yesterday on the side of the mountain that didn't know how old she was, and then I started asking her, and she goes, "No, I'm 40."
I don't know my age. Mikey's like, well, are you 30, 40? 40. 40 sounds good.
I go, "I'm 40." She goes, "tú también?" I was like, okay.
Right off the bat, it kind of seems like her face is really dark.
It is.
And her shoes are really bright, which I like it. Good and crisp and clear.
Just because she was sitting underneath the awning and there was more light hitting her feet.
Gotcha. So I would maybe play with that first just to even it out so I can kind of see what I'm working with, and I can turn this down later. But I think I would
So instead of using fill, what are you using in this case?
I'm using the graduated filter, I believe it's called.
So you're going to use a graduated filter, okay.
Yeah, so I'm just going to put a gradient kind of diagonal to kind of lighten up the face. I don't know, this might be backwards. But so all you do really is click and drag what angle you want it at. If you wanted a completely flat line, you can hold down Shift and it'll do it like that. But I didn't want that, so I'm going to try again and do it diagonal. And here we go. So click and drag. Nope, now we're going. So click and drag. Kind of feel it out where you want. So the smaller it is, like the harsher the, let me grab it and show you, the harsher the gradient will be. And the larger it is the smoother it'll be. So you just kind of have to find that, feel it out. When you get a good place you can play with the exposure a little bit.
I use gradient quite a bit for filling in areas that are a little dark, or vice versa.
Me as well. I like it on landscape especially. You can bring down the sky if you just want to do that. So still a pretty dark on her face, but I'm just going to play with the contrast for now until I like what the rest of it looks like, and then I might adjust that later with the adjustment brush or shadows, and we'll see what happens with this. So now it's bringing her back in, as you can see. And you can get the kind of like old creepy lady look there.
Let's go old creepy.
All right, let's do it. We can get her clarified with the clarity.
Oh, God.
You can even bring it out a little bit or bring
That's
it back
nice.
in.
I like to desaturate it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Vibrance is cool because it takes out certain colors. I don't know exactly what it is. Let's just see. It usually leaves in the warms, kind of like the reds, orange, yellows, and takes out everything else, which is pretty neat. So we can do something like that. And this is your before and after.
Right. And what else would you do here?
Let's
see.
see.
Looks a little bit over, too much brightness in certain areas.
Yeah, and the clarity does that. You can see if I take it out,
right.
it just brings those whites in. It just kind of makes it harsh pixels almost is what I've kind of found that it's kind of like. So I might play with that a little bit. Maybe bring in some blacks because it doesn't look like there's a lot going on. So blacks, I want to turn that down some.
That's starting to look a little better.
Whites, maybe bring it in a little bit, get a little bit more contrasty. So there's your before, after, and I'd still probably play with this for a little bit, but that's kind of a cool result right now.
I think that looks great.
Sweet.
All right, so I'm actually looking forward to messing around with a little bit more with Lightroom 4. I like these the new features that they've added. So Cool. So check out lightenupandshoot.com for the photo adventure that we did in South America. You can check out Rob Rice. He's got a cool blog about his experience and his photography. It is at IamRobRice.com.
Perfecto. And this is my last morning in Colombia. I'm about to fly out.
That's all right. You need to go get ready.
I need to go take a shower and get on a taxi.
All right, man. That was fun. Ciao.
Peace out.